Welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. This is an apology before we get started tonight. Unfortunately, we had an interview in the can with Joe Skipper lined up that this episode has been based around, and as I've come to edit the podcast together tonight, unfortunately the soundtrack that we had with Joe on, Joe's part of the interview hasn't recorded at all. So all I've got, I'm afraid, are my stupid questions and then a list of silence where Joe should be. So rather than not put out an episode at all today, we've got all the bits of me and Helen talking all the way through. We make reference to the interview with Joe both before and after where the interview should have been, and the episode's a little bit disjointed in places because obviously we'd planned on editing the interview in. I'd filled Helen in on what the interview was all about and told her some of the things that Joe says, and at various points before and after the interview we also talk about things that Joe would have mentioned. Hopefully some of this stuff will make sense in context. I've obviously not been able to listen to both parts of the podcast all the way through to check that what we're saying makes sense in light of the fact that Joe's interview isn't going to be here. So massive apology to Joe Skipper, who took some time out of his day to do an interview with us. These things happen unfortunately sometimes, so I hope that you enjoyed tonight's episode. I hope you get something out of me and Helen talking about the news from around the triathlon races from this week, and I will make sure that we raise our game for next week. Cheers guys. Hello and welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. We are brought to you every week by our sponsors, oxygenaddict.com triathlon coaching, fuelbycake.com and thesulphurtriathlon.com. I'm joined by my wonderful co-host Helen Murray. Helen, how you doing, mate?
Good evening, Rob. I'm good, thank you. Do I ever answer I'm bad? I don't think I do I? Sometimes I might say I'm tired, but no, today I'm good, and I have had a day off work, and I've been out on my bike, which always...
You've been doing it for the kids, haven't you? You've been out on your bike again. I've been seeing the pictures on Twitter.
Yeah, it was a good ride today. I went up into the Peak District again. Nice few hills up there. And I think, do you ever sort of forget exactly what's on your doorstep? And then when you go out quite close to home and you really appreciate what's out there, and you remember, oh yeah, this is awesome. I love living around here. And I had a bit of that today. It was great.
Magic. Where did you ride to?
So I went up a lot of hills and up to Pimchair? So up in the Goit Valley. And
yeah, lovely.
Yeah, the Cat and
Did you go
Fiddle.
up to the Cat and Fiddle?
Pub. Yep, went up to the Cat and Fiddle and then I back down. So the Cat and Fiddle is a pub between Macclesfield and Buxton. So I went kind of the back roads all the way up to the Cat and Fiddle. It was great.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if anyone's listening and they can get themselves into the Peak District and has never ridden the Goit Valley route up the back to the Cat and Fiddle, you've got to go and do it, because it's a one-way road as well, isn't it, and close to traffic pretty much because of that, so just magnificent climbing out there.
For about 45 minutes, I didn't see a single car. The only things I could hear were my heavy breathing, the birds, and the wind. It was absolutely stunning.
So you hear it here first. If you want to hear Helen's heavy breathing, head out to the Peak District, to the Goit Valley. I think we're going to get it entirely the wrong kind of listener from that, Helen, aren't we?
Yeah, don't go there. If you're talking fast, absolutely, that's me.
Right, well, what an episode we've got coming up for you today. So we're going to give you the headlines. We have got, in our race results coming up, we've got IM Frankfurt, Ironman 70.3 Norway, we've got Llandudno Tri from the good old northwest of Britain, we've
Wales,
got
North Wales coast.
What did I say?
Northwest of Britain, which, I don't know, I'm going to argue with that one. Definitely the North Wales coast, Llandudno. And it's Llandudno,
right.
Thanks.
Apparently Wales is no longer in Britain, apparently it's Wales. They're striking out for independence. We've got upcoming races. We've got a preview of Challenge Roth and a preview of the ITU European Champs, or the ETU European Champs out in Geneva. We've got sprint distance and European and Olympic distance, haven't we, both for age groupers and the elites. And we've got an interview with none other than the legendary Mr. Joe Skipper.
We love speaking to Joe Skipper.
He's rapidly becoming on this podcast more often than you are, Helen, isn't he? The poor lad. He's like, oh God, do I have to be interviewed by you again?
He does it.
He does, actually. He says in the interview he can't get interviewed anywhere else. So if there's anyone listening from a major magazine, you're missing a trick here. Get Joe on the cover. 4th fastest Ironman bike time in history. Get him on the cover.
And if you want a news line, Joe will give you a news guaranteed. It's not just a case of when you interview who say something like, oh yeah, it's going to be a tough game this week. They say the same things week in, week out. No, Joe will actually give you something to write about, so get him on, get talking to him.
He is not a shrinking violet, and we've got some quality quotes from him coming up later on, let me tell you. Right, Helen, but first we're going to kick it off with what is not even arguably the biggest European race of the year. We had IM Frankfurt, didn't we?
Oh,
and what a race.
What a race. Did you manage to see any of it? Because Ironman actually did do a little bit of live broadcasting for this one. So they had Welch and they had Lieto sort of commentating on the race. It was all like Kona again, and they were sitting in a little booth somewhere. And just,
was it any good? Were they good at it?
Were they good? Well, there wasn't enough coverage of the women's race. Surprise, surprise.
No surprises
there.
No
surprises there. But it was really cool being able to see. So Jan Frodeno had gone off. This is the 2008 Olympic champion, and he was already on the run. But then you saw the second and third place cyclists coming in, and they had a camera with them in the transition tent, and I was getting a little bit worried at one point because I thought one of the guys was actually going to strip off completely, but he didn't. But it was interesting. They sat next to each other on the seats, and I think that was all psychological. So yeah, the coverage, I didn't sit there and watch it for 8 hours, but it might have been on in the background for an hour or so. And
that's an interesting little insight there, isn't it? It would have been Kienle and Andy Bockra in second and third.
Yep.
Sat down next to each other, did they?
Well, Bockra went and sat next to Kienle, probably to try to, psych him out slightly. Kienle had a much quicker transition. Bockra was drinking tea, like most age groupers.
Just chilling out, was he?
Yeah, chilling out, taking his time. But it was really interesting seeing them come in and get out again. And yeah, I think it was cool. So essentially we haven't really talked enough yet about Jan Frodeno. Oh my word, what a performance from him.
Legend, isn't he?
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be any doubt after this race. If he can bounce back from this, there can't be any doubt who the favourite is to win Kona this year after that. What an astonishing performance. People who haven't seen this, the splits were...
he did
this is unreal.
46.02
on the swim, which put him over 2 minutes clear of the entire field. Now, this isn't some just like run-of-the-mill Ironman race here. He's put 2 minutes into previous champion at Kona, Freddie van Leerd. He's put 4 minutes into Andreas Raelert. He put 4.5 minutes into Seb Kienle. That is just incredible swimming, is it? There was nobody within 2 minutes of him.
No.
Nobody at all.
Burkle came out within a minute of him. Andy.
Oh, he did, yeah, but he was a whole minute behind, wasn't he?
Yeah,
you're right. So he's 1 minute down on him. But still, when you think a minute swimming at their pace is a solid 100 metres, that's a big old gap to have, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. And then he went on to the bike to record the fastest bike split of the day. And isn't it only second fastest bike split of all time in an Ironman race?
I think the only person who's ever gone faster is Andy Starkowitz, who's got the two fastest times with like a 4:02 and a 4:04, both done in Florida. And I don't think that, Frankfurt isn't a slow course. It's definitely a fast bike course, but it's never been, in inverted commas, as quick as Roth. I don't know whether they changed the course this year and whether it's a bit shorter or whether the route had been changed slightly. If it hasn't been, if it's the same course, he's gone 10 or 12 minutes faster than anyone's ever been on that course before. I think the previous bike court record at Roth was 4:14, which was done by Raelert a few years ago. So it's just 6 minutes is a massive, massive gap, isn't it, at any point? But what a performance by him.
And he was almost 3 minutes faster than Kienle, which...
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, enough said. And then
he's the complete triathlete, isn't he?
Absolutely.
To do that, fastest swim, fastest bike, and then he holds it together with a 2:50 marathon. Which, looking at the numbers here, is it the fastest marathon of the day as well he's done?
Yep, looks like it, definitely, by around about 2 minutes. A minute and a half over Andreas Raelart did a 2:52 and Frodeno did a 2:50. So, yeah, about a minute and a half faster than Raelart on that run. And he finished in a time of 7 hours, 49 minutes and 48 seconds. Not too shabby for a former Olympic champion.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really amazing watching the little bit that I did of him on the run. Actually, he didn't look particularly comfortable.
He never does, though, does he? He's not a pretty runner.
No.
Even when he was, he must be a sub 29.5 minute 10k runner to have been as good as he was and to win the Olympics. But he never ever looks comfortable when he's running. He's got a kind of long loping stride and his arms are all over the shop, but by God, he's got some guts to keep going, hasn't he?
That's it, and he just kept on playing with his number belt to begin with, and he just looked really, really uncomfortable. So to put that aside and just go at the pace he did and finish in 2:50, I heard them say he's gone out of transition and he's done a 6-minute mile. Just think, how? I can barely do a 6-minute mile at the best of times.
Yeah, unreal performance from him. And it's worth mentioning as well that the temperatures there were over 100 degrees in the shade that day. Absolutely scorching hot. Very, very uncomfortable for everybody, which has obviously affected the run times, because with a super competitive field like that, I think we could have reasonably expected them to be running in the low 240s. So I'm sure the heat's affected the run there. Yeah. And the fact he's got a 12-minute lead over Seb Kienle is obviously going to play part into that as well. To round out the podium now, we had Seb Kienle with an 8:01.39. and Andy Bokkeren in 8:03.49. Great result for Bas Diederden from the Netherlands in fourth with 8:05, pushing Freddie van Leerd into fifth with 8:07, and Raelart was 8:09. So really packed there, the top six all within a few minutes of each other, and it sounds like they swapped positions on the run quite a lot as well, so very competitive racing. My question is for you.
Go on.
Freddie van Leerd. He's 10 minutes off the pace coming off the bike. Has he shut it down, and has he decided he's going to save it for Kona?
Oof.
Has he given it his all, or has he thought, you know what, I can see the writings on the wall here, and he's done enough to hold off Raelart, and he's given away a couple of minutes to Bas Diederden?
That's a good point, because if you know that you're safe, you know that you're going there, but you're not going to win it.
Maybe for him the bigger prize is later in the year.
Exactly.
It's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's where the tactics come into play, and what you're peaking for, and also the competition element between them and the mental, get one up on them now, or do you just
absolutely.
sort of almost say, look, this is what I can do, but actually you'll know what I can do.
I'm not going to get near him today.
Yeah.
And then again, looking further down the field, Nico Lanos in 8th. He's swum a 48, he's biked a 4:17, which, it sounds normal, doesn't it, to compare to a 4:08. 4:17 sounds like a very ordinary bike split. But prior to this race, it would have been one of the fastest ever Ironman bike splits of all time. So, puts it in perspective. There was him, there was Tyler Butterfield, there was Freddie van Leerd, there was Bas Diederden, Andy Bokkeren. They've all ridden like sub 4:18, unbelievable. Whether Nico's blown himself to bits and he's suffered around the run, or whether he's also thought, because don't forget he's been on the podium there before as well, hasn't he? He's a previous winner of this race and a winner of Ironman Melbourne.
But if you look at the time difference, so you had Jan Frodeno in first in 7:49 and Enrico Janos in 8:29. That's like a 40-minute gap.
Yeah, and there's if you look down at the field to, you go down into the age groupers maybe, 30th place was 9:21, which is an hour and a half slower. An hour and a half. Wow. So that's 13 miles of running, isn't it, at Raelart's pace. So you could conceivably have been lapped by Jan Frodeno
That's a confidence booster, isn't it?
Yeah, lapped by Frodeno and still finished 30th overall at Frankfurt, 5th and go to Kona, 5th in your age group.
That is amazing.
Stunning.
I tell you, one person that we haven't yet mentioned who also deserves a massive talk up is Daniela Riff. Oh my word. So Jan Frodeno got a course record in the men's race, and Daniela Riff went and broke Chrissy Wellington's record from 2008, and she'd posted an 8:51, and she just absolutely dominated. Second woman was Julia Gager from Germany, who did a 9:01. So she won by 10 minutes, didn't she? And it was just absolutely impressive. And, you know, she's trained by Brett Sutton. She still does university stuff. She absolutely did herself proud at Kona last year, didn't she? And you do think she...
Super duper.
Absolutely. She can give really another run for her money this year. Yeah.
And again, Caroline Steffen came through in third with 9:11. So she's another 10 minutes back, isn't she? So a 20 minute gap over third place is seriously impressive. And I'll tell you what's very interesting about this. She's broken Chrissy Wellington's record on that course, who, you know, unequivocally best female triathlete or best female Ironman triathlete of all time. And she's only run 3:06.
Yeah.
She's still broken the course record. She's ridden 4:47 and she's only ridden the 3:06 and run a 3:06. Yep. If she'd put together a 2:56, she'd have been another 10 minutes faster. Wow. And I think she's capable of probably running, I think, under 2:50 if she had somebody on her shoulder pushing her. So, I mean, really.
Do you think, again, she knew that she had it? Do you think she might have held off slightly on that run? But
it's very possible, isn't it? I mean, is she going to push herself as hard as she possibly can? It's doubtful. She's got a 10-minute lead, hasn't she? So what a shame that Chris isn't racing still. Chrissy really could have done with someone like her when she was racing to really push her when she was at her best. Would have been awesome to see those two going at each other in Roth, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Really, really cool. It would have been brilliant. But no, if Daniela Riff can, pull together a marathon, as you say, a sub-3 marathon for Kona, then hello. But again, you've got to recognise that, as we were saying, the heat would have played such a massive part in Frankfurt, and what is Kona? Ridiculously hot and humid as well. So it would have been really good prep for all of those racing for Kona.
Right, I'm going to give a couple of shout-outs here to some age groupers from the UK, because there's some very studly performances indeed. As far as I can make out here, the first British age grouper was a chap called Alan Scott, male 35 category. He's placed 4th in his age group, 34th overall with a 9:26, which, you know, chapeau. 57 swim, 5:01 on the bike, and a 3:21 run. Interestingly for us, a couple of Tri listeners, second British age grouper overall with a time of 9:40 was... Do you remember a few episodes ago we were talking about the run-walk method? We had an email come through from a chap called Tony Weeks saying, can you expand on that a little bit? Can you tell me, I understand Daniel's run paces, but how are they going to transfer over to sort of my race paces for Ironman? Tony has come second British age grouper. He's
brilliant.
7th
Tony,
in his,
well done.
Yeah. Well done, Tony. 7th in his age category, so he's collected the Kona slot today with a 9:40 overall, so 7th place for him. I got a great little email off him today saying, love the podcast, thanks for the advice, thought you'd be interested in knowing that I've managed to snag a Kona slot.
That's fantastic.
Thanks for the advice about the run-walk training. So it just goes to show, it works, mate. It's worked for Tony.
Well done. So he 3:36 run to finish with. So then I guess he did use that run-walk method in Frankfurt.
I don't know whether he used it in Frankfurt. He said he's used it in training.
Okay.
From what I can work out, he just said the run was just the most hot, unpleasant sufferfest you can imagine. I don't think there was a lot of planned walking or running for lots of people. In fact, I saw some great photos on Slow Twitch of Frodeno
putting his head in an ice bucket.
Putting his whole head and upper body in the ice bucket. So there's a tip for you. If you're thinking you can eat the ice that comes out the ice bucket, I wouldn't, because it's probably had several very sweaty pros. put the whole sun cream drenched faces and heads in there. So don't eat the ice. Don't eat yellow snow, and don't eat the ice from the ice buckets.
That's your tips for this week. Definitely. Well,
yeah, you said, man. I'll tell you what, we've got to say as well before we move on, did you see his new bike? Frodeno's new bike?
No, but I'm not so much of a bike geek as you are, Rob. You are a self-confessed bike geek.
I am a bike geek, mate. He was riding a new Canyon that they kind of rolled it out for him that day. No one's ever seen one before, and very similar looking to the Scott. You know, the one with the integrated sort of drinky tube thing that sticks right out over the front wheel. Had this very futuristic thing that basically fills in the gap between the aero bars and the front wheel, but it also extends all the way along the top tube, if you can imagine it. So basically the whole chunk of the front of his bike, between like where his wrists are when he's on the aero bars, all the way through to between his thighs was filled in. So it looked like this super over-exaggerated, you know, we're calling it a drinks bottle, but it's clearly like a nose fairing to get some aero advantage. And then on all the photos of him riding, it isn't on. And apparently it dropped off.
Interesting. I can't see it.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It says Frodeno had lost his liquid storage up front, but that did not slow him down. So thanks to Slow Twitch for the pictures. So, but yeah, man, whether that's helped him, I wonder how far into the bike his little nose cone fell off, whether it was early on or whether it's helped him out a lot.
Maybe it weighed a bit less when it fell off.
Yeah.
Marginal
Nothing's
gain.
been slowing that boy down that day, has it?
No.
Boy, oh boy.
Should we move on to Norway?
Let's do it. Go on.
So,
give us the greatest hits, mate.
Alright, it's a 70.3. It's on the west coast of Norway, Haugesand. It looks absolutely beautiful. I was watching a little video from it, and the lake apparently for the swimming it only just meets the Ironman standards, because it's quite small, and they almost do like a U shape. They kind of go back on themselves to fit the swim in, but it looks absolutely stunning. Lots of cobbles to deal with on the run, but the support looks brilliant. And I have the men's race right in front of me, and that was won by Richie Nichols of Great Britain. So well done, Richie. Rob, guess the time of the run for Richie Nichols. He's well known as being a very swift runner, and he didn't disappoint.
I know, I've got it in front of me, mate. It's staggering, isn't it?
1:09.
It's a fast course, but my golly, to go under 1:10.5 marathon, there must be some people scratching their heads at that. There's a few guys who've gone within 4 or 5 minutes of him, but you know, some quality athletes have been smashed up by him here. 24-minute swim, 2:15 on the bike, and 1:09 on the run for 3:52. So fair play to him. And
he chased down Marcus Tomska, because Tomska did a 2:08 bike, so he had a lot of work to do on that run. But Tomska could only put together a 1:16.5. So yeah, good work, Richie Nichols.
So Tomska, of course, was the stud who smashed up Ironman UK Staffordshire 70.3, wasn't he?
Yep.
So again, he's put 6 or 7 full minutes into a world-class field, which is just brilliant. I mean, fair play to him. I hope he's thinking about stepping up to Ironman. I'd love to see him get in the mix with the superbikers, because that's a great bike split he's put together there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Rob, one massive shout out to the women's winner. So, who won Ironman Austria last week? It was an Austrian woman, Eva Vuti.
How'd you say it? Eva Vuti, is that right?
Yeah. She went and won. Just 7 days later, she went and won the 70.3 in Norway. So that is absolutely fantastic. Whatever she recovers on, I want a bit of it. Susie Cheetham of Britain was second. Her 10th straight podium in a 70.3, excluding the World Championships. How solid. Very,
very impressive.
Isn't that impressive for Susie? That is just super consistent. And then Radka Vojkikova came in third. So Vuti did a 4:15, Cheetham finished in 4:18, and third was 4:21. Then two other people we need to mention here. Caroline Livesey, racing pro. She was eighth with 4:34. And then an age grouper, a British age grouper, Kim Morrison, actually finished ahead of her. She was the first age grouper overall for the females, and she bagged her slot to the World Championships. So Kimberly Morrison did 4:30, which is really impressive.
That's seriously studly, isn't it?
Yeah.
4:30 is, fair play.
Yeah, she's trained by...
step up, girl. Start racing pro. Get yourself some pennies.
She's trained by Mark Pearce, who used to work for British Triathlon, and also is coach to Will Clark. So.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
I'm also going to give a shout out to Caroline's husband, Mark. He was the first British guy across the line, second in his age group, 20th overall, so not shabby at all in 4 hours 15.
Fantastic.
He's done a very good race there. 26:30 on the swim, 2:20 on the bike, so not far off the pace of the pros at all. And then a 1:23 run, so good performance from him.
They're both super duper athletes, Caroline and Mark. Absolutely brilliant.
And I also want to give a shout out to an age grouper from Norway called Tommy Alexanderson, who emailed me through listening to the show, and he's done very well and finished in 37th overall with 4 hours 22.
Fantastic.
So that's a good performance from him. 26-minute swim, 2:19 on the bike, and then not the run he hoped for, I don't think, with a 1:29, but 4:22 after a 1:29 run.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oof.
Really good.
Yeah, good work, Tommy. Hold it together on the run next time, mate. We can have you up on the podium.
It does look absolutely stunning, though, Rob, as a race. You have to kind of go across, get a boat over a fjord, and it just looks beautiful. And I think probably quite a good race, actually, for us Brits, because the temperature and the climate would be pretty similar. So, if you're used to racing in a bit of drizzle and things like that, they definitely had drizzly conditions a couple of years ago. So it's could be a good one, and the support looks brilliant. So definitely.
I don't want to go abroad and race in the drizzle, Helen.
Well,
I'll stay here and race in the drizzle. I want to go abroad and have guaranteed sunshine.
Yeah, but then you pay the price, don't you? Sometimes. Like, would you prefer to be racing in Frankfurt, which had 100-degree humidity, or 100 degrees and disgusting percentages of humidity, or would you quite like doing all right in a race in Norway because you're used to the conditions?
Yeah, you make a good point. It's better for your racing, but there's something inspiring about thinking about racing in the sun, isn't there?
Yeah. I was gutted when the weather in Monterey was so bad.
Yeah, you were very unlucky there, weren't you?
But then it helped, because it was cool on the run, so that definitely helped. So from Norway, we go to Llandudno on the North Wales coast.
Is that how you say it? Is it Llandudno?
Llandudno, yeah, or Llandudno. Yep.
Llandudno, very nice.
So
another absolutely beautiful place, of course.
Yes, with the Orm.
Not just the Orm. We love it. One of my favourite places to be, actually, in the whole wide world.
On a sunny day, it's absolutely beautiful. On a wet and windy, horrible rainy day, I don't think it's the nicest of places. I had to do my geography field trip there for GCSE, and I grew up down the coast, so I know it quite well, and it is beautiful. But when it rains, it rains.
It sounds to me like you spent more than one wet weekend in Llandudno, Helen.
One or two.
I've only been there in the sunshine, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
I'm detecting in your voice there the fact that maybe you might have just got wet a few times and all the coursework got ruined by the rain.
I think it was having to measure pebbles on the beach. It wasn't the most joyful of experiences. There you go. Anyway, on to the racing. It was won by Phil Wolfe in first. He did 2:03 from Mammoth Lifestyle. Sorry. Paul Hawkins came in second, and Christopher Silver came in third from University of Birmingham.
Very good. We had Alice Sharp was first female and 7th overall, so fair play to her. That's a good result for her. Scrolling down the page. Oh, come on, Rob, do your P's here. Get the preparation
Katie
sorted.
Latham came in second from South Cheshire Harrow. And
Very good.
Lisa Cox was third. But Alice Sharp won by a staggering amount. So she was first in 2:18.
Yeah.
Was 2:49.
So big gap there. Big gap.
It's like a half
We need
hour
more
win.
women racing in Llandudno. Yeah, we need more women racing, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Sprint race. We had a win for young Johnny Chatton, member of Manchester Tri Club, Knutsford Tri Club. We had Johnny down to a few sessions last year, didn't we? Super swimmer. He is an absolutely brilliant swimmer. I think he's only 16. Nathan Veal in second place, and in third place overall, Rhiannon Roxburgh.
Absolutely brilliant. Wow.
Very good. Well done to her. Second place in the ladies' race was Alex Aldous and Jane Trina in third place. So well done to all you lot. Love Llandudno. I'm going to go and race there one day.
Along with all the other ones.
I say this every week, don't I?
Yeah. I just go there and eat an ice cream and then take the Llandudno box off. You'll be fine. And go on the toboggan run. Then you'll be sorted. You'll get your Llandudno fix. You'll be fine. Yeah,
I'm going to take Xander down there. He'll love that. He'll absolutely love it. Right, come on, moving on to news then. Looking forward to next week. Big race coming up this weekend, Helen.
Roth?
Challenge Roth, or Challenge Roth, if you're going to be a German. Apparently it's pronounced Roth in Germany, but if you say that in this country, nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. So Challenge Roth, possibly the oldest, is it the second oldest Ironman race in the world?
It's pretty old.
It was the original Ironman Germany, until the organisers were told by the Ironman Corporation we're going to move this to Frankfurt, and Felix's father said, actually, I'm going to keep on holding my race here, thank you very much. I really love Roth, and I'm going to do it on the same day. So, traditionally, I think this is the first year in a long time that Roth has been on a different weekend to Frankfurt. They used to hold it on the same weekend as a kind of poke in the eye to Ironman Germany. But super massive race. I think there's something like 5,500 people racing it this weekend, if you can believe that.
Wow. And I guess a lot of wave starts, or else they wouldn't fit everyone down that canal, would they? Yeah,
huge amount of wave starts. I think they go off every 5 minutes, don't they, for a good few hours. So, congested bike course. Give us the greatest hits. Who are the pros that are on the start list there? Who can we look forward to?
So we can look forward to Dirk Bockel, Timo Bracht, Niels Stromhold, Andrew Starkovic, and Harry Wiltshire as well is racing.
Harry Wiltshire's racing, is he?
He's on the start list. So
he's going to lead out the swim, isn't he?
Yep.
No question. He's going to lead out the swim. He's going to be in there on the bike. Now, my spies tell me, if you can get yourself out of the swim in the lead pack, you have a massive advantage on the guys just behind you, because you have the lead car clearing the way for you. If you can stay with the lead pack until lap 2, the guys in the lead pack have got a car that rides in front of them and clears the way of the age groupers for them, beeps the horn, and they all move over. If you are 30 seconds off the pace, or even a minute off the pace, all those age groupers have moved back over, the main race has gone through, the motorcycles have gone through, and you have to battle your way through. The crowds don't clear out the way going up the big hill, so it's apparently a massive advantage if you can get to that first hill in the lead pack.
Wow, that's a good insider tip there.
Good insider knowledge, hey?
Definitely. In the women's race, I reckon it will be between Jodie Swallow, who's on the start list, and Yvonne van Vleuten, who has won it twice. So I think there'll be a brilliant atmosphere as ever in Roth, but I don't think it has quite got as many big names there this year. Last year, Rinny raced there, didn't she? We've had Rachel Joyce race there a couple of times in the past. But this year, it just seems like some of the big names are lacking, and that's possibly because they all went and did for it last weekend. And if anybody is doing a very dirty double, then hats off to them.
Yeah, you said it. Now, that women's race is going to be interesting because of the completely different racing styles of the two favourite women. You've got Jodie Swallow, super strong swimmer, even stronger biker. On a day, she's a fantastic runner, but has struggled with injuries and struggled with holding it together on the run a few times. Then, in contrast to that, we've got Yvonne van Vleuten, not sort of recognised as a great swimmer, is she?
No, often comes out off the pace, doesn't she, in Kona, and then has
a long way off the pace,
and has big work to do on the bike and the run.
I could see her being 10 minutes down on Jodie Swallow.
Yeah.
If Jodie drills it. Do they start the women with the men, I wonder? Or will they have a separate start? Because Jodie is strong enough that she'll be in the lead pack of men.
Yeah,
on the
she's
swim.
absolutely brilliant swimmer.
And that's really going to damage Van Vleken's chances, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not that Jodie's going to want to draft, because she always wants to lead the packs anyway when she's swimming out that way, but it'd be very interesting to see it happen, because obviously we've got Van Vleken's going to be running her down, and Jodie's just got to hold it together, hasn't she?
Yeah, I think my money is on Swallow. She's really, really come on over the last season or two in Ironman, and I think she's going to be the one to beat.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm backing Jodie. I follow the Swallow.
Yeah, so it should be a brilliant race. And then, Rob, one other race to preview, or should we preview that after we've heard from Joe Skipper?
No, let's preview it now. Come on, let's get all that preview out the way.
We've got it's the European Championships in Geneva this weekend. So they have a sprint race, and then the elites will be racing. Sorry, the age groupers have sprint, and there's an Olympic race. There's Paratriathlon European Championships. There's the elite as well. So loads of age groupers will be out in Geneva. Fantastic place to race. The lake is absolutely stunning. I've not actually raced there, but I did live there, so I can tell you it's brill. And there's lots of the women's race in particular, I think, is going to be quite exciting, because Jodie Stimson is going to be making her comeback from injury. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how she goes. Lucy Hall's out there, so no doubt one of the first out of the water. Nicola Spirig, I reckon it'll be hers to lose. She's on the start list. And Lisa Norden as well. So, you know, that fantastic sprint finish between Lisa Norden and Nicola Spirig. But I'd say Lisa Norden just hasn't been back to that kind of form that she was in 2012. Since then, she's struggled with injury. So my money is on Nicola Spirig for this one. Also racing, look out for Jessica Learmont, who's a very decent swimmer, and India Lee, who she won the Blenheim race a couple of weeks ago, and she's really coming on as well. Former runner, and has really improved her swim. So be interesting to see how she gets on there too. In the men's race, Great Britain will be represented by former under-23 world champion Matthew Sharp. In there as well is Grant Sheldon, and then Tom Bishop and David Bishop. But some of the other names on the start list, Richard Varga, so he'll make sure that there's a quick swim going on. Of France is on the start list, and Sven Riederer is also on that start list.
So it's a pretty stacked field, isn't it, really?
Yeah, yep.
So the guys are taking this one seriously. That'll be great. Now, the rumours are as well, it's going to be a non-wetsuit swim even for the age groupers, Helen. It's been so hot over there.
Well, yeah. My friend in Geneva sent me a message the other day. She said she'd been in Ireland recently, hot in Ireland, and then she forgot. Oh no, I'm going to be going back to Geneva where the temperature's been 40 degrees. So, yeah,
Toasty weather. Now, Coach Hamish Shaw is racing out there this weekend, Helen. We are just fingers crossed, him and me, make it a no wetsuit swim. Hamish he's had a rotten year so far. Do you know, he crashed his bike back in November and did his hip. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Totally infected. He's now on his 7th or 8th or 9th set of antibiotics for this thing. He just can't get it to heal. He's barely been able to swim. So we've just said, you know what? Just go and drill it on the swim. Yeah. So if you're racing age group 25 to 29,
standard.
That's it. Standard Olympic distance. Hamish is going to drill it on the swim just to try and get some of that frustration out of his system. So if you see a young man with Shaw written on his chest, give him a cheer on from us, because he's had some rotten luck. We'd like to see him have some fun out there, wouldn't we?
Definitely. Best of luck to everybody racing out in Geneva, and I'm sure there'll be lots to next.
That's right. And drop us a line as well at Cup of Try on Twitter. Twitter's our main way of getting in contact with people at the minute. We've been a bit rubbish with our Facebook page. So when you get over there, drop us a line, tell us what's going on, tell us if it's going to be a non-wetsuit swim, tell us what the atmosphere's been like, and we'll mention your tweets live on air next week. It'll be lovely to hear from you, won't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's good to get feedback and hearing from people as well, and stories and things like, you know, Rob's tips or the running, the walk, if it's been your first triathlon or your, 31st triathlon, it's really good to hear from you. So just get involved at Cup of Tri.
We will most definitely be trying our best to get some interviews. I've got a monthly MP3 player lined up. Do you know, Hels, I might even try and get us down to the press conference beforehand, see if we can get some interviews from people there as well. That'd be really good, wouldn't it?
Oh, I did do that a couple of years ago. It was good, really good. It's interesting speaking to people before the race and then getting them afterwards as well. It's always obviously a bit more relaxed afterwards, but equally absolutely shattered.
Yeah, I want to see the pre-race game face. I want to see Joe Skipper psych these guys out, kind of Macca style, to be the cocky young lad in the press conference and be psyching people out over it. And I want to know whether he's talking to people and building allegiances about, he mentioned Domenico Pasquello.
Yeah.
If he can get out of the swim around the same time as him and they can sort of ride together, that's going to be a fearsome combination.
Well, I always think, how can they actually ride together? Because if they ride together, then obviously it's, surely they're drafting. But no, they're not. You can still ride in packs in an Ironman. It's just you have to be that set distance behind, don't you? So
absolutely,
you can totally work
So
together. So it can turn into a very, very, it's a tactical thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's even with their draft zones, the pacing aspect of it means that they can ride. And I encourage lots of age groupers to do this as well. If you can ride at a similar pace with someone of similar ability to you in any race, not drafting, but legally, whatever the drafting distance is, whether it's 7 metres or 10 metres or 12 metres, and you take it in turns for 5 minutes each to push the pace along, the effect of that at keeping the overall average speed up is really noticeable, and it's a big help to people. And you'll see this happening in the pros races when these guys have decided they're going to try and work together and not surge to break each other. They take a few minutes each at the front and keep pulling and putting the pressure on. The other one sits back a bit and mentally can just relax and think, okay, I've just got to hold that gap at 10 or 15 metres, and then I'll go through again and push the pace for a bit. And from what Joe was saying, it worked really well for him and Lionel Sanders when they raced at Texas. I'd love to see them pull the same stunt in Kona. I would love it.
It would be, because the two of them are such good, strong bikers. So, wow.
Do you know what? I'm hoping that Kienle has a bad swim. Because he says in the interview, Skipper's saying, well, Kienle's improved his swim and I was hoping I'd be able to keep up with him, but he made the front pack the other day. Interestingly, at Frankfurt, where it was a non-wetsuit swim, Kienle didn't make the pack. He was 2 whole minutes down on that pack of guys who were 2 minutes down themselves on Frodeno. So maybe that plays into Joe's hands if Joe's about similar ability to guys of Kienle's ability on the bike. That's a train of 3 right there, boys. Ronnie Schildnick, that's a train of 4. They're coming for you. Here comes the Skipper Express.
It'll be brilliant, absolutely brilliant to watch. So we have to wait till October for that one. First up, it's going to be Ironman UK, and like we were saying before the interview, Rob, it's Roth this weekend, and I was reading that temperatures in Roth are going to be ridiculous. We mentioned last week about training in the heat, didn't we? And apparently there is another heat wave on the way. So we said that we would do a Coach's Couch special on training and racing in heat. So what are your tips for dealing with the heat and perhaps even acclimatizing to the heat if you know that you're going to be racing in a very hot and humid place?
Well, it's a difficult one, Hels, isn't it? If you don't live in a hot and humid place and you're trying to acclimate to a race that is going to be hot and humid, I think there's some things you can do if you go into a place like Kona where you know it's going to be hot and humid. But the big challenge for people racing in Frankfurt and Roth or wherever when there's a heat wave is that people are just not expecting it. It sneaks up on people and you've got to deal with the actual, firstly the heat, secondly the strength of the sun and possibly even humidity on race day itself. Now we've got to give a shout out here, I forgot to mention Joe Skipper's former coach Paul Savage, who is a member of Manchester Tri Club. He's qualified for Kona, racing in the heat at Frankfurt this weekend, and he dropped us a tweet before the weekend saying, "God damn it, Rob, I wish that you'd given your tips for racing on the heat for this weekend, because I've got a race and it's like 100 degrees in my hotel room right here." So he's been going back and forth on Twitter, giving us a bit of banter. He obviously managed to hold it together, but he just said it was brutal, just trying to hold it together racing out there. I think the biggest tip that I can give to people is you've got to try and keep your body as cool as possible. I mean, it sounds obvious, doesn't it? Mm. You've got to try and keep your body as cool as possible when you're on the bike and when you're on the run. You've got to pray that they've got ice available on the run. Now, sometimes they will, and I read articles that said at Frankfurt they'd shipped in something like 40 tons of ice or something like this to try and keep people really cool during the run. So if you've got access to ice on race day, here's a really great tip. Take with you an empty Ziploc plastic bag and just fold it up and stick it in the back pocket of your jersey that you're going to run in. And then you've got some options. Once you get to the aid station, you grab this Ziploc bag, fill it full of ice, zip it up. You've then got an ice pack. You can do whatever you like with that. It can go in the back of your neck as you're running. It can go down the front of your tri-top if you've got a nice tight one that's going to hold it in. It can go, down the shorts a little bit, but that's going to give you the ability to carry some ice with you for more than the sort of, everyone can get ice at the aid station, but it's going to be melted within 100 metres. Yeah. So if you've got that little baggie of ice with you, then it can be really useful to take it with you. As it melts, you can pour it over your head. So anything that you can do to stay cool by pouring water over yourself on the bike, that's the first tip I'm going to give. And my big tip for this one is when you're approaching the aid station, if you've got a water bottle that's nearly empty, get as much of it drunk as you can and get rid of it. Then pick yourself up a water bottle to keep on your bike, and then get yourself another water bottle for your hand. So it's going to involve you slowing down considerably here. You get that first water bottle, stick that onto your frame and leave it alone. Immediately grab a second water bottle. You're going to drink as much of that as you want, but then the rest of it, you're going to try and put some of it over the back of your neck and all over the back of your tri-top and try and get that as wet as possible. Then it goes on the front of your tri-top, all the kind of areas that are going to get caught by the wind. And that cooling effect of it blowing over you is going to be massively helpful. The next thing you can try and do is you can get it inside the vents on your aero helmet. So if you've got those little vents at the front, you can try and squirt it through the vents so it gets your hair wet. If you can't do that, and let's be honest, we don't be falling off our bikes, do we? So the next best tip, I was shown how to do this, and it works surprisingly well. If you just look down at the floor for a couple of seconds and you squirt that water bottle into the back of your aero helmet, sort of under the long pointy helmet part of it, it'll get all the back of your head and the top of your head wet. And then the airflow that gets sucked in through your helmet is actually going to use that water to evaporate and keeps your head nice and cool. And it's really surprisingly effective. So it's a dead simple tip, but nobody knows about it. The airflow that gets sucked in through your helmet uses that water to evaporate and keeps you nice and cool.
Interesting. One thing that I have noticed is Daniela Reef, for example, just had a normal road helmet. Chrissy Wellington never used to wear an aero helmet because she used to get too hot. So isn't there something there in saying, actually, maybe in a really hot climate, it is better to go with a road helmet because it's got more ventilation, and you can get more water sort of on you. And actually, if you're cooler, then, I don't know, will you feel better and more comfortable and therefore do a faster bike split anyway because you're not?
Yeah, you make a very good point, Helen, and I think the jury's split on this one. I've read some scientific evidence that says that with an aero helmet on, people are not actually hotter when they've measured their core temperature using that very pleasant way that they have of the old thermometer up the bum. The core temperature isn't any different for somebody who's got an aero helmet on or someone who's got a normal helmet on, but definitely the perceived heat is hotter for the person who's wearing the aero helmet. So it comes down to how well you tolerate that heat. And I think it comes down partly to telling yourself, I know I feel hot, but I'm not any hotter because the scientist says so. So that's it's a real sort of game of which one makes you feel more comfortable, isn't it? Scientific data says you don't get any more hot on the aero helmet. And I know for myself, I've tried it out on hot days. I can squirt that water up under the helmet and I can feel perfectly fine riding in 30 plus degrees. So I've always used the aero helmet. For me, the gains I need from an aero helmet. If you're Chrissy Wellington, maybe she doesn't need the gains as much as other people. But yeah, again, it's a question to wonder about. I think the difficulty is always if this heat wave is sprung upon you, or sometimes the day just gets really hot, doesn't it, when you're out there riding already, and you're in your aero helmet and you're starting to feel like, oh my god, my head's cooking. These tips are going to help people get a little bit cooler, I think, and just feel a little bit cooler.
Yeah. And what about cap or visor on a run? Because cap, you could obviously put ice under it. Visor is pretty good for being able to squirt water onto your head.
Yeah, definitely. Great tip there, I think. Always go with the hat as opposed to the visor. The hat, even if you can't get ice on the course, you can get it wet, and that water is then going to, again, evaporate and take heat away from your head with it. You also don't have the effect of the sun's, radiation coming down on the top of your head, especially and it is mainly blokes here, especially for blokes with baldy heads. You can't underestimate the effect of that. You don't want the sun beating directly down on your head. And then, like you say, if you can get ice, a cap full of ice that'll sit underneath that cap when it goes back on your head and gradually melt and sort of dribble down over your head can keep you nice and cool as well. Another tip I've heard people say, although I've got to be honest, I've never tried this myself, is putting a handful of ice down your shorts into the old male meat and two veg area is apparently an extremely effective way of cooling down a man's body. Now, never fancied it myself, but people do swear by it, so if you're really suffering in the heat, it might be something that helps you out as well. Ice in the old gentleman's patch. I don't know whether you tried that yourself, Els.
No, I haven't, surprisingly. No, I haven't. There's some really good tips there. And what about, Rob, if we do have a heat wave coming up again here in the UK, any tips for training with the heat?
Well, I think the first thing is you've just got to get out there and train in it. You've got to get your body acclimated, and the only way to do that is to get out and train in the conditions that you've got. I don't think there's a huge amount of evidence that says you can replicate it by, for example, running on a treadmill wearing a bin bag, as people used to try and do, or running inside wearing more clothes to get your core temperature up. I just think it's a different kind of heat. It's a bit like how when you're riding on the turbo and you're inside and you're in the heat, your body sweats differently. So you've essentially got two kinds of different sweat mechanisms. You've got the sweating that happens where sweat evaporates off your skin and that takes heat away with it. You've then got the sweating that happens, I'm sure you've seen this on the turbo or the treadmill, when there's no air blowing across you, water just kind of runs off down your skin, doesn't it? Have you noticed that?
Yeah. No fan
really hideous. Yeah, really, really hideous conditions. And I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like 5 or 7 times more efficient to sweat where the sweat evaporates off. So that kind of sweating that you do on the turbo, and after an hour's turbo you feel super thirsty and it's like you've lost 2 or 3 kilos. Well, you probably have, because your body has got to lose 3 or 5 times more water to take away the same amount of heat when it isn't evaporating. So just that simple effect of having the fan blow across your back when you're on the turbo, like I said, I don't think you can replicate the conditions of the heat and humidity by trying to make yourself hot and uncomfortable indoors. I think your best bet is to try and get as fit as you possibly can, and then maybe within the last couple of weeks when you're tapering, do some of your easier sessions or some of your steady sessions indoors in hot conditions just to practice getting hot. But really, I think the best way to practice training and racing in the heat is, if you can afford to, get out there and train and race in the heat beforehand, and if not, invest in a good Bible.
Thanks for that one, Rob. So that was tips for training in heat, absolutely brilliant. And if you have a coaching question for Rob, then email coachrobwilby@oxygenaddict.com. That's coachrobwilby@oxygenaddict.com, or you can tweet @cupoftry.
Van Debbie Dozy. Hell, I think that brings us to the end of this edition. It's going to be a monster long one this time, mate. I think we're going to be up near an hour and a half with Joe's interview, you know.
Oh, heck. I hope everyone's still listening.
Yeah, it's going to have got somebody through an entire Ironman bike training session, hasn't it?
Brilliant. Well, let us know how your bike session went, if we've helped you all the way through it, or your long run.
Yeah. Yeah, do drop us a line at Cup of Try. I've had some great tweets this week through from people who've been encouraging us with our podcast, so thanks very much. We really appreciate it when people tweet to say we're enjoying the podcast, and we'd like more of it, actually. I'd like to grow this as a community, Helen. I'd like more people to get in touch and start giving us some nonsense. And if you've got anything you would like featured, if you've got any races you want us to talk about, or even if you've got any race reports you want to tell us about, send it through and we'll get you on air. So listen, let's finish here by saying thank you very much for listening. I've been Coach Rob Wilby.
And I'm Helen Murray.
And you've been listening to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. Tune in next week when we're going to have all the news from Challenge Roth and other races as well. Have a great, safe training and racing week, and until next week, we'll see you soon. Bye now.